Go
So
ahead.
we have somewhat of a light agenda today. We're going to talk about CERCLA. That never takes much time. Just kidding. And some questions about mitigation versus remediation, updates, and then the schedule of future meetings. So why don't we, I think we start with attendance or roll call. And please share what's going on. That's the one thing I know we got feedback on, that people love to hear about what's going on in other communities. So if you don't have anything going on, please just make something exciting up.
Okay, and Brad, he wasn't in the web review, so I'm assuming he's not here. Connie?
Present.
Thank you. Dan Brown?
Dan is here. We have our river walkers, I think, lined up for this coming year to talk about PFAS and other health advisories and fish consumption advisories along the Huron River. So we've been working on that. Been a lot about other activity that's related to basically building PFAS awareness, talking about polluter pay and related issues. Nothing too specific beyond that.
Thank you. Daniel Burlingame? David Wynn? Gail Mansowitz? Gail Dugan?
Gail's there. Yep.
Gail, you're on mute if you're trying to talk.
He said in the chat he's here but can't do audio, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
He's not receiving audio.
Jason Legowski?
I am here, and no local updates, but I will say the rumor is that the MCLs for the US EPA, PFAS, PFOA, are supposed to drop tomorrow. And they have released, I think yesterday, the interim guidance on PFAS destruction and disposal. If people want, I can stick that in the chat.
Perfect.
And Joe?
I'm here. Thank you.
And John? Breeze?
Yep, I'm here.
Lois Graham?
Here.
Lynn Knopf? She said she wasn't feeling well today, so might not be able to join. Lynn McIntosh? Mary Blanchard?
I'm here.
Pam McQueer?
I'm here and have an announcement.
Hi, Pam.
Hi, everyone. May the 18th, Gail Dugan and I have scheduled a town hall meeting. We're trying to coordinate with Allegan County Health, MDHHS, Eagle, to do a update from Eagle on the findings at Menasha for the contamination.
Okay.
Do you have a date or anything, or are you still on the works?
We do. No, I just said May 18th. It'll be a Saturday from noon to 2 will be the meeting, and we're going to hold that at the public library in Otsego.
Cool.
Yeah, we're excited to get some updates.
Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
Patty Baldwin? Portia?
Present and no updates.
Richard Burns? Rick Gradisky?
Here, no updates.
Tamara? Sandy?
I'm here. They started the capping of the House Street dump last week, I think. There's several Tonka trucks there driving around, moving dirt. They're saying they're hoping that it will be done by the end of this year, which is pretty optimistic, I think, but here's hoping. So I'll keep you posted. It also says Bill Barnett is present, and I think Patty Baldwin just jumped on, so that helps.
Okay.
I don't know any updates from them.
Okay. Shalene? Stacy? Teresa? Tony?
Tony is in DC. He's not present.
Okay.
All right.
So moving on to subcommittee.
Yes. Website review. Was there a meeting of the website subcommittee? I take it that's a no.
Yep, there was. We
Oh,
go ahead,
well,
Rick.
Yeah, we met and we had some updates on the traffic on the website. We didn't have any, technical items to discuss. But I guess we did. We talked about messaging on foam, how to do that messaging, and that's going to be a work in progress for a while. But yeah, the website's getting quite a bit of traffic, and we had a new site, the Hamilton area of interest, and I think there were something like 900 people that logged on to look at the site after it was announced. I think maybe 800 or something. But anyway, the website seems to be going well, and yeah, we're gonna be discussing foam over the next couple months. So
that's great. That website, I gotta say, I have people from out of state who log in there. It could really be a model for how other states could share some information about this. So,
and there's surprisingly a large number of people from out of state logging on too. So yeah.
Yeah, I know other PFAS activists that use it for information, so.
Yep.
Good job, Eagle, for your website group there. All right. Anything else? I have a naughty cat, sorry. Preventative measures. Did that mean? Okay, probably not. I think Dave's not here. How about engaging the public? Was there a meeting there?
Yes, this is Portia, and we did have a meeting today. We are discussing digitizing the survey, and so I've come up with a program to help import the paper survey into Google Forms. And there have been a few obstacles that we discussed, and I'm going to continue to chip away at that and hopefully have something for everyone to view next month.
All right, perfect. Thank you. And membership. Anything on membership?
This is Mary. We did not meet, and I had some personal things, so did not interact with Daniel or Joe.
All right.
Hopefully
Well, we still have members, so we're good. So, okay. Good. Go ahead. Oh, I thought you were talking.
And I think Lynn is present, so
Yep.
Lynn, we see you.
Okay, great.
So put Lynn in there.
All right. I think next on the agenda was CERCLA, everyone's favorite topic.
So let me take a minute and introduce Kaylin. So Kaylin is our a fairly recent hire into the Superfund section as the section manager within Eagle, within the remediation and redevelopment division. And so Kaylin has the luxury and opportunity to serve. How many people you got under you, Kaylin? 30?
33 in the section. Yeah.
33 in the section, all working on Superfund, EPA coordinated sites with a wide range. I'll let Kaylin talk about the different responsibilities that he has, but working specifically with the CERCLA process. So we've asked him to give you a brief overview. It's not going to be in depth. We're not going to try to show all the nuances to this, but kind of just give you a big picture overview of what the CERCLA process is. And then I'll come in the backside and we can talk a little bit about what that looks like from the state perspective for Part 201, the state cleanup process. And then we can talk about the difference between remediation and mitigation, because sometimes people use those terms interchangeably and they're not always interchangeable. So, but Kaylin, take it away. And Kaylin's been a great new hire. I've been with the state a couple of years, but you've got a lot of experience behind you. So if you want to give everybody a quick introduction, Kaylin.
Yeah, thank you. Been here for almost 3 years. I'm a geologist first. I worked at 4 different consulting firms before I came to the state. Kind of specialized on site characterization side of things before I got into kind of management at a previous consulting firm, and kind of came over here doing similar work, and then eventually became a part of the supervising team. So yeah, as Abby said, the Superfund section is comprised of all of the Superfund sites within the state of Michigan. That includes both ones that we manage as the lead agency and those that are managed by EPA, and we are serving the support agency role in those. But one thing you missed, Abby, is we do, in addition to that, is we also provide oversight on all of the DESMOA sites, which includes all of our DoD sites that are subject to the CERCLA process. And I say that because we certainly have other DoD sites, and by that I mean Department of Defense, that are subject to other programs regulatory-wise, like RCRA. Selfridge is a big example of that. We do engage with them, but our MMD folks, our Materials Management Division folks, are the leads on from the state perspective on those. So Superfund and a significant amount of the DoD stuff. Wordsmith, obviously the big one that we have under our umbrella. So yeah, before I get into these slides, just, full disclosure, I am not a CERCLA expert. I've been working in CERCLA for 4 or 5 years. There's just a lot of nuance to learn and to know, especially the state role is unique within the CERCLA umbrella. I'll give a brief overview of all this, but I can try to answer as many questions you got, or if you have any at all. But yeah, just to, I'm not too aware of how much knowledge that the audience has here of CERCLA, but it became a product of a couple of really nasty sites pre-1980. They realized the Clean Water Act wasn't enough to focus on some of our nasty sites in the country. They implemented CERCLA, or like I spelled out here, the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Reliability Act. It was later reauthorized by SARA, or the Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act, in 1986. Essentially, the anecdotal term of Superfund is reference to the taxing mechanism that was put in place by this, that essentially tax a lot of our chemical manufacturing and some other sectors in order to create a big pot of money to clean up sites, i.e. Superfund. The irony of it is that fund got the mechanism to fund it going away in 1994. So we've been operating off of congressional appropriations since 1994. Once the pot of money ran out, which ran out very quickly. And then most recently in the infrastructure bill that Biden put into place, it actually reauthorized the taxing mechanism to fund Superfund. So we are now getting money again into the pot. We don't know how much yet, but it is a new funding mechanism back in place. It's term limited, so I think it's only 10 years we have it, but it was a big win for us regulators and people that need money to clean these sites up. So just what I'm going to cover is just the 2 kind of primary sides of the trade for CERCLA. There's it could be broken up into 3, but I just stuck to 2. That is our site discovery, the pre-remedial side, And then the cleanup process or the characterization process, the remedy selection, and then kind of the long-term, what we focus on. So you can go next slide. And I pillage these cartoons off of the internet, so you can find these at the URLs below. So for us, the two primary kind of sites that fall into the CERCLA process, you have the first is federal facilities and non-federal facilities. And federal facilities are those that were once or currently owned by the federal government, where the federal government is the liable party. For non-federal facilities, those are sites that we determine and we score them to see if they qualify as Superfund sites. We don't have any federal facilities in this state that is a Superfund site. They do exist within EPA Region 5, but we do not have any within this state. So regardless of the Superfund listing, sites like Wordsmith, the federal government has to follow some kind of process to clean up their own liabilities, and they follow the CERCLA process. We serve as a lead regulatory role, but they self-implement the process. So they must do everything within their own policies to be consistent with the National Contingency Plan, which is part of CERCLA. So once these sites are discovered, we determine if they warrant listing. So we start out with a preliminary assessment phase, which is essentially a desktop review. We kind of look at the history. We see what kind of contaminants were there, get a brief overview of the kind of pathways that they have, that like groundwater and surface water, et cetera. You'll see the green bars on top of the bottom of this graphic. At any given point in any one of these phases, we can refer them to another program if another program is capable of handling it. We don't want national priorities list to be a number one objective if there's already a current situation in place, i.e. Part 201 here in the state of Michigan. Or it can go down the opposite way. If we see that this site does not score or does not warrant additional evaluation, then we can, in MPL side of things, we can NIFRAP or say we're not going to look at this site ever again under the CERCLA program or Superfund program. That doesn't mean if a new emerging contaminant comes out that we can always open a site back up to look at it, but that is our way of getting out of the database for the Superfund for EPA. And like I said, this is not just for MPL sites. So federal facilities, i.e. Wordsmith, for their various contaminants, they follow this process as well to determine where their contamination might be. So they'll do the preliminary assessment where I left off. If it warrants more, if they have cause or identified potential risk, they would move on to a site inspection, which is a really quick and dirty way of seeing if there's a presence or absence of contamination at the site. So I'll stick to non-federal facilities because that is typically what we do here in the state of Michigan. We are scoring these sites at each one of these phases, and as we move along the process, we're seeing these come more of a contender for MPL listing. The site reassessment is us saying, let's revisit the site if it's been a decade or a couple of years or a couple decades, and we'll look at it again, see if we need to reevaluate and see if it warrants an additional consideration for the MPL. And then all of this we're using is this graphic's kind of misleading. We're using the hazard ranking system to score the site at these various phases to see if it warrants MPL listing. So I'll stop now. Any questions now before I move on to kind of more focus on the pre-remedial side? Yeah, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Are you evaluating the Wolverine sites?
Yep, and I'll get more into that. I can get more into that on the next slide. Actually, go ahead and flip to the next slide, Kelly.
Okay.
And
I just had a question about the process. Maybe
I might answer it here. So let me cover this one. But I see it. Do you want to ask it now and see if I'll answer it? Do you want to pause or I don't want to cut you off?
Oh,
He froze.
I'm sorry.
Did he froze? Okay, I thought he might have froze. Yep.
He froze, but Lynn, did you have a question too?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to interject this here because a lot of people are not aware of it. But the reason the EPA first looked and then looked again at the Wolverine site was because of a citizen petition. citizens can petition the EPA to come out and do a preliminary assessment. And not everyone's aware of that. It doesn't have to come through a state agency or health agency. It can be citizens documenting and filling out their forms. That's all. It's a good thing to know.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I can tell you that, so the state of Michigan, we have a grant to perform the site assessment process, and that is managed by the Superfund section here in RRD. That is essentially this entire process, or the kind of before we get to actually investigating the site for remedial investigation. We are looking at sites, assessing them, seeing if they score high enough to warrant moving into that process or become listing like a federal to a Superfund status. That is one way to petition. I mean, we are constantly evaluating sites we have been working on for decades, or sites that recently got discovered based on a removal action by the EPA. There's a number of ways to get into our pipeline, and we definitely welcome any suggestions people may have. Gelman is a site in Ann Arbor that some might be familiar with. That's a site that we recently actually listed or in the middle of listing right now, that we've been working on for what, 3 decades, Abby, probably. That we decided, let's get Superfund involved for a number of reasons, and now that'll be managed within, by EPA with us as a support agency. So we're constantly evaluating sites. We have so much sites a year that we can get into this pipeline. So yes, we start with a preliminary assessment, and at all these given times, we're doing, like I said, the hazard ranking system as defined there by HRS. We're seeing if it scores a greater than 28.5, and that 28.5 is a very non-unique number as part of the HRS system that was established in the 80s. It's evaluation of the 4 primary pathways. That's air, that's soil, which includes subsurface intrusion or VI, or vapor intrusion, surface water, and groundwater. If it doesn't score, like I said in the last slide, we can NIFRAP it or put it under no further action under the program, or we can say another agency has got it, like I said, or other cleanup authority is what we say. But if we want to keep evaluating the site, we move on to the site inspection. Again, we're always looking at the score. If not, if it doesn't score again, we can punt it back to NIFRAP or OCA. And if it does, we keep it moving in the process. At this point, we're really starting to see, all right, is there any other alternatives for this? Should we really consider this? And to consider it, the federal government can't just come along and require it. They actually need our concurrence in a governor letter recommending it. So they need the formal state concurrence to actually even put it onto the list. The reason the HRS icon was on the last step of the last slide is because at that point we really actually make the HRS score final. The earlier green boxes there are preliminary. They are draft scores. And once we go to actually list, we do a full comprehensive package of the score. It gets significant review. There's a massive comment period. And we proposed it, and we have to wait for the next Federal Register period to get it added. And then, if there is an alternative, we'll punt it to another alternative agency or et cetera.
I think
All right, Rick.
yeah, let's let Rick, and then
Okay.
I've got one more thing. Go ahead, Rick.
This is where I had my questions. So the Wolverine sites have preliminary scores, correct?
That's correct. We did not do a complete formal HRS
Okay.
package.
And then if there is a final score, is there public comment on that?
Once we propose listing, there is. Yes.
Okay, so we would have a chance to review everything and comment. Okay.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, when we do the site inspection, and usually the site inspections are first cut at it, and generally in our state at least, if we think this is a Superfund caliber site, we usually do a site reinspection, which is like a more thorough data gathering in the field to get the scores we exactly need for the package to really bolster the score. To not go into too far of the details, unless you want me to for Wolverine, I can tell you that we really are waiting on the promulgation that Jason talked about earlier. We can certainly score a site for PFAS right now, but we really need promulgation to get it listed if we so choose. That site, we did not formally include a lot of PFAS sampling as part of the scope because we didn't even have a scoring mechanism yet to use to evaluate it. So we recommended
my question. I just
continued
wanted to make
evaluation in the
sure that
process.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there'd be a comment period, and sounds like there will be. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. No problem.
Yeah. And Caitlin, you guys generally look for a lot of public support and from the even from the communities before you do final listing with NPL, and it's got to get the governor's stamp on it to actually become an NPL site, correct?
Yeah, the public is a key stakeholder, and for a long time, and still to this day, there's a stigma around a Superfund site being in your neighborhood. I mean, truth of the matter is, I think the stat is everybody in the country lives within 7 miles of a Superfund site on average. And there's in the 90s, for example, we were really reluctant to list sites and get them into the pipeline and get those federal dollars to clean up the site, just because they don't want the idea of potentially losing property values and having, you know, their neighborhood tainted by a Superfund site. But if you can look on the contrary, it's a huge funding mechanism and a way to get the federal government to get some money into this to help clean it up and give us their support and their expertise. We can only do so much with state dollars, and these sites are generally really bad sites. So it would take a significant amount of resources to do that kind of cleanup. So yeah, and then once, and especially once it's listed, the EPA provides funding mechanisms for independent community involvement. A lot of our sites have these citizens active, CAGs similar to this, that are funded by EPA as part of a stakeholder group for these specific sites. So it's been really beneficial. That's our number one way to get our public voice. Call, for example, their CAG meets every single month, and that's indefinite. So we get a lot of good feedback from that. So.
Lynn's got her hand up again. Lynn, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in quickly here. Yeah, I'm very familiar with Wolverine site. Not far from it, actually. What is troubling here, and again, I'm putting this out for general education and then also for you, is that in 2012, the Wolverine site rated high enough to be on the national priority list, and it was handed over to OCA, Other Cleanup Authority, and the state and the city and everybody pushed. There were a lot of politics to keep it to that degree, and it was in those 5 years that all the PFAS spreading and this and that. And I asked myself why it's not simply reiterative, not even based on PFAS. The Wolverine site was already high enough to be a Superfund site, but they got voted off the island because of the politics. And it took letters from city leaders and municipal people and all sorts of people to disregard the actual dangers. And I don't understand why it's not a scientific decision, because the facts are it's contaminated, and every day people are asking me, "Oh, I wonder what they're going to do with that site." And it's like I'm thinking, it's really a landfill. It's not really a site. It's pretty bad. So that's my concern, and I don't understand why the public should weigh so heavily if scientifically and in terms of damage being done, it's a bad site. I don't know if you can answer that.
And the governor concurrence is a big part of this, and you're absolutely right. It's absolutely political. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, the science shows that's contaminated. We got the score to help support that in those kind of cases. The example of the late 1990s is Governor Engler had a policy that he would not list any sites under his purview while he was in office. So, but at the same time, the on the flip to that is the Superfund option often is a negotiation tactic as well. When we list a site, EPA is involved. They do a significant amount of potential responsible party search and determine who can pay back what the federal government has to put forth to get the site cleaned up, or to get them to actually enforce the site to be cleaned up. Sometimes I don't want to say threat, but a threat of becoming a Superfund site is enough to get a responsible party engaged back into motion. So they'll use it as a stick, and they'll wave it in front of them. If the EPA is feeling like they're getting enough movement from the responsible party, then they may, and I'm not saying this is the case at Wolverine, but that might be enough incentive to say, all right, we'll keep dangling this here, and once it comes to going into the Superfund process, things get delayed because it takes years for us to list. It takes years for us to get boots on the ground. So we don't want to stymie that process.
Yeah, I get it.
So
It's a hard
it's a lot of
thing. It's not
decisions.
just one.
Yep.
It's a lot of decisions, but I tell you that I just think everybody who's listening in realizes that, if the citizens aren't aware, they don't speak up, and they get outvoiced by the responsible party and the politics. Yeah. But it's complex. I get that.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Lynn.
your answer. Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure others have a chance, because I know there's a lot of people living near a lot of sites. So if there's others that are living near a site that need, a contaminated area that want to ask, I want to make sure everybody gets to jump in. So it's that too.
Yep. I only have one more slide too. So.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm good in this one. So this is kind of a good breakdown of like the after listing process, or for sites that like federal facilities that listing is not a part of the equation. Like I said, there's a preliminary assessment, site inspection. That's where the boundary is of implementing the either an MPL listing or moving further in the process, like remedial investigation. Just to kind of clarify the stuff up top. The site is in progress indefinitely, really, until we can finally get closed out, if ever. The record of decision, I remember I said there's kind of 2 to 3 sides of this. The investigation, until we get to a record of decision, is like the middle part, and then there's the significant amount of cleanup and monitoring that happens thereafter. So we investigate a site. There's a comprehensive understanding of the conceptual site model, finding all the exposure pathways. There's a risk assessment built into the next stage, which is the feasibility study. The feasibility study looks into the potential remedies and, again, like a comprehensive risk assessment. At that point, we kind of make a decision on the best approach to remedying the site. One important thing to mention for ROD. Oftentimes our sites get one of two choices, and for us that's either going to be cleanup, so actually remedy, or containment. And we have a lot of sites that we have a significant amount of contamination at that we are centuries away, to be very honest, from actually cleanup. We are containing it to remove all the exposure pathways, and that's all we can handle right now, because again, we really need a lot of money for this program. And that's that. So the remedy comes back to like a restoring aquifers and getting this thing to exactly where it needs to be, or we worry about restricting the property so no one can exacerbate the current conditions. So regardless of the outcome, there's implementation of the decision made. Generally, we start with a remedial design. That is a couple year process of us determining the best approach. We then construct it, install it, whatever it may be. And then there is a significant amount of time thereafter of the long-term management. That's the O&M. The way the cost breaks down is when it's just to kind of shed some light on that. The EPA funds a majority of this. If it's a federal lead site, the state is obligated to do a 10% match. So that means if the EPA is doing a remedial investigation that costs $100,000, we're going to put in 10%, which is the $10,000. The catch is for once we get into the O&M phase and the long-term monitoring phase, we are then subject to is generally the maximum amount of time is a 10-year period of time where we're obligated to do that match. But once that site goes into the indefinite phase of long-term monitoring, the state becomes 100% on the hook for the costs related to the O&M, which, if you can imagine, becomes quite a big obligation. We are compelled, that is a state Superfund contract with EPA to supply those funding mechanisms for those. A classic big example we have in this state, just to give you some context, our Ott Story Cordova site in North Muskegon. I think right now we action plan about $1.8 million a year for O&M, and we don't have an off ramp for that. So, and that is strictly containment site. So that's one of the biggest examples, but one that I spend a lot of energy on myself. So yeah, you can see the milestones along the way here, the various phases and starts. I hope you guys can take this slide and walk away knowing something about it. So, oh, and I didn't talk about removal actions, just real quick. At any phase here, if there is a need to kind of skip ahead in the process and implement something for, a high risk situation, or, instead of waiting for an entire remedial investigation to be complete, if we know there's enough risk at a certain portion of the site or a need to implement some kind of remedial strategy, we can implement a removal action at any time. That could be time critical or non-time critical, and time critical means must be implemented within 6 months of the action memo being signed. So it's a couple ways to kind of jump through the process while getting something in place to be protective. Yeah.
We did both at Wolverine. We did the time critical removal as well as the now doing the more traditional preliminary assessment. So, yeah.
And the most recent, just to close the door on Wolverine, the most recent recommendation letter for us, and we're saying Wolverine, but there's 2 sites. I believe on both sites we recommended further consideration. So we are kind of open-ended right now until other stuff falls into place and we have, unilateral decisions and stuff internally. So
yeah, I'm going to talk about some of those other things later today. So, all right. So I'm going to take and run with Connie's got her hand up.
Connie's got a question real quick.
Yeah, real quick. I used to work with EPA at the Superfund office in Washington, D.C. headquarters. And one of the things we really, really focused on, and what I don't see being done here in Michigan, is focusing on potentially responsible parties to do the cleanup. And we don't fuss around with monitoring forever. For example, the Carter Superfund site in Detroit, I worked on that. We got that site, a huge PCB site that was contaminating the Detroit River. We got it cleaned up in 4 years. Now, I don't see anything along those same lines being done by the state of Michigan to try to get things moving by identifying potentially responsible parties. You have that. You have that in CERCLA. You have that. So why aren't you focusing on that? I mean, that's so obvious.
Yep, and unfortunately, we don't enforce CERCLA. That is strictly the EPA's.
No, but you
department.
can help identify the PRPs because you've got all the tax assessment data.
Yep, and
you
when they
have
do their
everything.
PRP, yep, and when they do their PRP searches and enforcement, they rely on the data we provide them.
And is it the governor that doesn't want to ruffle the feathers of PRPs so that he or she can get their political donations from them?
I can't speculate on those decisions,
serious,
but
you know,
I think the first conversation to have is with the EPA. I mean, they are the leads on the enforcement, on the PRP searches. We don't inhibit that from happening. We are a partner, and when they want the information, we absolutely share it. I can tell you that we have a very strong relationship and partnership, and we have a lot of conversations about PRPs and re-engagement of PRPs. There were decisions that were made in the 90s and 80s and earlier. I can tell you that we constantly reevaluate, and a lot of these companies are very creative, made deals in the 90s that we have to live by, consent decrees, et cetera, and judgments that were made that they were negotiated that we didn't exactly come out completely as a win. So,
well, you should have pushed for full remediation.
Oh, I don't disagree. So,
All right, one other quick question on the hazard ranking system. Do you have independent parties besides Eagle doing the hazard ranking system or scoring? I mean, for example, do you have risk assessment professors, people from the School of Public Health on that committee? Because frankly, I'll be honest with you, I don't trust Eagle. I would feel much better if there were other highly qualified professors of risk assessment from schools of public health being on that HRS scoring team. Do you do that, or is it just simply Eagle? I say that because we run into problems at the Carter Superfund site where you tried to bias. It wasn't Eagle at that time, but it was a different state agency trying to bias to get under 28.5. So do you have that?
So the site assessment program, obviously maintained by EPA. We are funded on a portion of it. For sites that there might be any kind of public scrutiny, generally they do the site assessment scores themselves. But as part of the site assessment process, there is no risk assessment portion of it. So it's strictly a look of looking for an observed release into the environment, which media pathways are impacted, the extent and magnitude of some of that, and we do a scoring based strictly on documented evidence of the release of the contaminants to the environment. We don't do any risk assessment portion of it. We do an evaluation of like population studies and how many private wells could be impacted. It's a very conservative approach, but for sites that might have an extra close look of making sure we are not missing anything, EPA generally actually handles them themselves. Gelman is an example. Gelman completed the work themselves because they wanted to make sure it was completely well vetted and thorough. All of the stuff that we do internally, again, it's through the site assessment grant, but every single report is reviewed and approved by EPA. I can tell you that that process is robust. Our reports go through a significant amount of scrutiny. Once we move more forward in the process, they have a validation group that goes through and validates all the data to ensure we collected it. We followed our QAPs. We rejected any data that was potentially flagged or questionable. But no, the team, I can tell you right now, they fund 1.5 full-time positions for me to have for the site assessment program. I have one person who's been here for 25 years, and I have another person who's been here for 8 years doing site assessment. I came into Eagle as that person doing site assessment. I was the only person with my counterpart at 25 years doing the work because that was all the EPA funds us to do. EPA does have consultants that do some of that work, but it's very rare. Primarily, it's the state agencies that do it, and they pick and choose when they can fund their own site assessment.
All right.
Okay, let's
Thank
transition to 201 because I promised Kalen he would get to his dinner before it got
Yeah,
cold.
so that's what I was saying. Go eat dinner. Thank you, Caitlin. This was really helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Any follow-up questions, by all means, reach out. I would love to chat. So.
All
Thanks,
right,
Caitlin.
thanks.
I'm gonna just kind of not go into a real I'm not going to go quite as in depth as what Kalen did on the Superfund process. You saw from his slide that there's very set prescriptive, process for Superfund, for CERCLA process. The same thing happens in 201. If you can go to the next slide, Kelly. There is only, we call it different things. It's a very similar type of process. We have a little more flexibility than the CERCLA process prescribes under 201. We still do the initial investigation. That's going to come in through baseline environmental assessments, property transactions, complaints. It's going to come in through, source identification or source tracking, where nowadays we're tracking back surface water concentrations, or we're tracking back fish concentrations, or we're trying to figure out what things are coming from. All of that starts in that initial investigation. So there's all different kinds of ways that stuff can come into that first bucket. We look at the hazard assessment and we say that could be all kinds of things. But if there's an immediate hazard, so we're in the initial investigation and we see that there's PFAS in somebody's drinking water well, that site hazard assessment can be done over and over and over again to make sure we know we've got it all. But if we see the initial hazard assessment needs a quick response to protect public health, we can take an action right there to mitigate, and this is something we're going to talk about in a minute here, mitigate the potential risks to public health. So we'll give them a filter. So that's a great example of a mitigation technique. But that site hazard assessment may continue on as you're getting more and more data. So you may not have all the data you need to make those hazard assessments, but you're going to continue to do that as you go through the process. Remedial investigation, I think most of you are pretty familiar with what that means. Means we're going to go out and we're going to put monitoring wells in the ground to try to figure out not only how far has the contamination spread laterally, but how deep into the aquifer, how much of the aquifer is contaminated, how far underground has it spread, both vertically, horizontally, and in some cases, you know, you're going to follow those seams because you may have seams of, you know, gravel seams, sand seams that might be carrying the contamination in one or more directions, and sometimes in all directions, as it has over at the Wolverine site a couple of times. So we do a lot of remedial investigation. That can take a long time. Just like the Superfund process, that investigation phase, to do a really good job of it, can take a long time. Often, not all of our sites will do feasibility studies. Some of them just jump right into cleaning things up or taking containment actions if that's what we see. But often we will do feasibility studies to say, just like with Sandy's site across the street from her, you know, you've got 50 acres of sludges sitting there for, you know, 60 years. What are you going to do with it? You need that feasibility to tell you what's going to be the best, most economical, cost-effective way to contain this, and or, you know, to the best of your abilities, be able to control it for the years to come, because we know we're not going to remove 50 acres of sludge. So what are we going to do with it? So you do that feasibility study and you try to figure out what can we, what's the best option for that site and for the community. The cleanup action plan, just like it says, put together an action plan for the cleanup. For the state side, it's important to remember under Part 201, we have a causational standard for liability. What that means is if you cause the contamination, you are liable for the contamination. It was intended to be a polluter pay law. As Lynn said, there's some people that are thinking that it's, you know, perhaps not strong enough. The other problem we have, though, is that the, you know, often our liable parties are out of business. They're gone. It's, you know, it's many years, couple decades since we started doing the Part 201 amendments, and many of our polluters are gone. So, or they've gone bankrupt. So we have probably about 50% of the sites in the state have no liable party. So that action plan is really important for the state to be able to prioritize which sites are we going to be able to afford this year, which ones are the highest risk and are uncontrolled, do we need to be able to put our money towards to be able to address this year. So go through some engineering design and get that site cleaned up. Now, some of these sites are much different than others. You know, in some of our cases, you'll have a catastrophic relief of gasoline at a gasoline station. You know, definitely going to take care of the immediate response because you're going to have a fire and explosion hazard. That's easy to see. Everybody understands what happens. But what you don't see is that the lingering effects of it soaking into the ground, potentially soaking into the building next door's, you know, walls of their basement, and the vapor intrusion that might come from that. So you may have to do hazard assessment from those initial response actions, you know, for a couple of times to make sure you're getting everything. But you can see that you're probably going to have to dig up a portion of that site to get that soil out of there, and obviously remove the gasoline. So there's lots of things, but the monitoring, site use controls, those of course are going to be part of what Caitlin talked about with the long-term monitoring. You're going to have to do some site controls, whether it's deed restrictions, it's capping sites, it's groundwater pump and treat systems. There's all those kinds of things. So let's go to the next slide, because some of this all fits in together. And I think you guys know most of this, so I don't want to just lecture at you. The other question I got asked is, what's the difference between mitigation versus remediation? And so just like we talked about before, mitigation for us is really about reducing that threat of potential risk and harmful effects of the contamination to public health. Usually it's around drinking water, but We also have sites, non-PFAS sites, that have volatile organic chemicals that can get into the buildings, like in the case of the gasoline getting into the basement of the buildings. It can cause not only a fire and explosion hazard, but it can also cause cancer effects. You can have inhalation issues, acute responses to that benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene stuff getting into the basements. Those are things that we need to mitigate right away. So we're either going to put a drinking water filter on, we're going to put some sort of a sub-slab depressurization system. That's mitigation. It doesn't actually clean up anything, but it's mitigating those risks. Remediation, on the other hand, is the term that we're going to use kind of generically to talk about cleanup, to talk about removal, physical removal of contaminants from environment media, whether it's groundwater, soils, surface water, or air. Let's go to the next slide, Kelly. So mitigation usually is referring to actions taken to protect public health. It can be used in a couple of other ways, but usually we're going to have examples like extending municipal water, the drinking water filters in the homes, and that could be a point of use filter under the kitchen sink or a whole house filter. Vapor barriers can be, mitigation type extent. Sheet piling along a river. You're not really cleaning anything up. You're just mitigating the risk to the river. And then same thing with lining storm sewers. Again, you're preventing that groundwater infiltration, but you're not really addressing the contamination. And so mitigation can do, lots of things, lots of good things that we use mitigation, but we will do that at various points along that Part 201 process, because usually we've got an immediate risk we need to take care of. Next slide. On the flip side, remediation, again, we kind of covered this, usually refers to some sort of an engineered system to remove contaminants. We're either talking groundwater pump and treat systems, excavation of soils, PFAS treatment technologies. There's getting more and more talk about potential in situ, in the ground treatments for PFAS, but a lot of what we're seeing right now is going to be ex situ, where you're actually removing groundwater or you're removing, in a lot of cases it's waste, so that it's not getting into groundwater. And so you're cleaning up actual media specific, so groundwater, soils, or surface water. But it doesn't often have immediate impact to protect public health, because it's got to work so long and operate for so long that you're not going to get those public health. So usually we're doing mitigation actions at the same time we're talking about doing remediation actions. All right, next slide. And I think this might be my last one. And sometimes it's both, right? There's a PFAS product called Plume Stop. And it's a colloidal carbon that's injected into the ground, and you use it like a barrier wall. And so if you have a groundwater plume, it's going to flow through this through this wall of carbon, basically injected into the ground. It'll filter out the PFAS as it's getting to a river, usually is where you would, or leaving a site, something like that. In that case, it can be used as mitigation or it could be used as remediation. Pretty expensive, but sometimes you can have both a mitigation bonus and the remediation at the same time. Radon systems. I don't know if anybody in the group has got a radon system in your home, but radon systems actually create a little depressurization underneath the slab of your house to protect the house from getting the radon from entering into the house. And it also vents it out into the atmosphere. So it doesn't actually clean it up so much, but it is removing it from underneath your home and keeping the home, so it mitigates mitigates the indoor air issues and cleans it out from underneath your house, so it's not getting in there. So sometimes you get both of those effects. So let's see, did I have anything else, Kelly, or was that it? I think I was trying to keep it simple. Yes. All right. So hopefully I answered your question, but was there any other questions from mine? I know Kaylin's was much more exciting.
Any questions or comments for Abby on that so that we're clear on the difference of those? All right. Oh, wait, Mary Blanchard's got her hand up. All right, Mary, what you got?
Mine is not so much a question as a comment. I'm glad to see that an emphasis is being put on containment. That does not seem to be a strong point at this point with the Falk Road dump. Ours is still being allowed to go off onto the neighboring properties and into the lake. I'm also concerned about the fact that this still comes back to money. We've talked different times about reaching out to our legislators and that we can't continue to push this down the road when it keeps expanding and getting worse and new sites are coming on and that. So I'm wondering if Abby or Kaylin or anybody else has any helpful advice as to how we deal with this.
I think you have more power. You know, we're not in a position to advocate for legislation. You guys have that power and you have that ability to go talk directly to your legislature. I think those are the conversations that are the most powerful and the most impactful. And so I know there are many conversations going on right now around polluter pay and other potential changes to Part 201. So I guess, Mary, my advice would be to get involved in those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, Abby. Joe, you have your hand up? And then Connie. And then Lynn.
Okay, Abby, how many part? Oh, go ahead, John, you're first.
Now I unmuted. So what I was going to ask was at the current level of funding, do you have any idea how long we may have to do this thing? And then obviously Mary asked the very same question that, well, what could we do to shorten that expected timeline?
So are you asking, Joe, how many sites we have to address and how much money we have how long the money will last? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
The last I knew, the remediation redevelopment division had about 25 to 30,000 sites in the state of Michigan. I don't know how many of them are orphan, but yeah, I'm sure we do not have enough money for all of them. So I can't guesstimate I don't know if they've done those cost projections on what it would actually cost to clean them all up, because not all of them have been assessed for risk. And so I know they're in a process right now of assessing. A lot of those are older sites we don't have a lot of information on. Some of them are just like Mary's with the dumps that are in, little rural areas, and we have no real files on them. So I think the cost estimates are pretty hard for anyone to get their hands wrapped around at this point. So I can only guess. There's always a need, though. Let's say it that way. There's always a need. There are many, I think every township in the state has got at least 1, 2, sometimes 3 dumps within their own townships. So because that was just the thing you did back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Everybody had a dump. Everybody dumped their stuff there. So the question is whether or not the industry was also dumping there. But
so it sounds to me like a lot of people, myself included, are concerned about this idea of like, we don't have the money to do it. I get that. But I don't know that this MPART meeting is the place to decide that. So What you're suggesting, Abby, is that people need to become more active, maybe in a different context, through a different group or contacting legislators or something like that.
Yeah,
Angela dropped an incredibly good link in the chat that will give you information for your state senator and representative. And I think there's also many of us that are involved in kind of other groups outside of MPART, but that work on the same issues, that if you want to reach out, maybe that's where to put this energy. Because I think everybody is exactly right. And we're all here because we're impacted by this. So it is very frustrating to hear, we'd like to help you, but we don't have money. However, I get that we don't have money. So both can be true, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure people, if you get a chance, look in the link and see that. And if there's other people that know of groups that are working on, I know specifically polluter pay is a big issue, increased funding for investigation, remediation, and cleanup. If you know of groups that are working on that and you want to drop that in the chat so people have a direction to go, I would love that. So
yeah,
okay.
because I am not in those conversations. I'll just say that.
Okay.
There are other people in the department that are directing those conversations, and it's not, they haven't been PFAS specific, so I've not been in those conversations.
Right. Okay, I'm going to go to Lynn, and then Connie, you had your hand up and now it's not up. So go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, okay, so maybe someone could do this for me. I don't know how to drop this into the chat, but it's something I just became aware of. It's called the Green Amendment. And there are some states that are actually trying to get it as a constitutional amendment to protect citizens and citizen health, so that it's above even the legislative. And yeah, someone just said they love the Green Amendment. And the speaker who's in charge of that, she is an environmental attorney from the Delaware watershed. She will be on April 20th. She'll be speaking in Manistee. And in early June, she'll be coming to Grand Rapids. But to me, that's more forward thinking. But if we can make it part of our state's constitution, 2 or 3 other states have done that. I hadn't heard about it until I was contacted to help promote it. So there's a book about it. So I would just look up the Green Amendment, and it's a thought for I mean, go to the top, right? So
hey, Lynn,
yeah.
can you put your email in the chat, and then people, you guys could start talking about this? I think it's great.
Yeah, I just let's see. I don't know how to do that. I've never done it before, but I can try. I will try.
Okay, you try.
I'll give it a try. If not, I don't know if someone can look it up and
well, Angela put some stuff in there too, it looks like, on the Green Amendment. So
yeah. I'm so excited to hear you talk about that. That's actually something that my organization works on a lot, not me specifically, but yeah, on our website that I put in the chat, there's like many states that are either have enacted the Green Amendment or are like considering bills. And so we have a bill tracker with a map that shows all the bills and everything, and also an overview. And we had at one of our conferences 2 years ago, Maya, who was like the person that created the Green Amendment idea. Yeah, great. And she presented. So I could like try to connect y'all if that's helpful.
Perfect.
That'd be great, Angela. Yeah.
All right.
Wonderful. All right.
Connie.
Yeah, one of the things we had to do when we were at EPA, when we were trying to get money for Superfund, we had to produce a report card saying, here's how many Superfund sites there are, and here's how many we have cleaned up. I would like to see the remediation division, R&R division, produce a report card. We have 30,000 Act 201 sites, state Superfund sites in the state, and we've cleaned up how many? 5, 2, 1. That will show the legislators we don't have the money to clean these up, so let's give us the money. Green Amendment, whatever, polluter pays. You got to have a report card. That was the only way we could get money into Superfund, is by showing we had a darn good track record on cleaning up Superfund sites. We need to do the same in the state.
Great idea, that's it. Connie. Thank you. All right. We have our homework. We got a lot we got to still do. All right, Abby, I know you thought you were done, but I
Next.
think you're up for updates
I have one more
now.
slide. Yeah, Kelly can go to the next slide for me. All right, it's a poorly kept secret. Let's just say that. It's a poorly kept secret. EPA will have a big announcement tomorrow. It will be regarding the MCLs, and I am not at liberty to give you more details than that, but it will be coming out tomorrow. So, and if you really want to know, ask one of your neighbors, because they probably already know, because it's, like I said, a poorly kept secret. So that is on tomorrow, which is Wednesday. On Thursday, you should have all the COG members should have gotten a special invite to a meeting on Thursday. And let me look at my calendar to give you the time. If you did not, you should have gotten that for 1 o'clock from Kelly, 1 o'clock on Thursday. So I'm not going to go into it right now. It is embargoed information, so we will share it with you on Thursday. It'll still be embargoed on Thursday, but we want to give the COG advance notice of this information, as we are doing with other stakeholder groups on Thursday. So if you can join us on Thursday, that would be fantastic. So that's that. And then we are doing some town hall coordination. So as Pam mentioned early on at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to start talking about Otsego and see what we can do to support the planning around that May 18th meeting. For Otsego, there's also, we're looking at trying to put together one for White Pigeon area. It's an area that they're struggling to get 50% of the people to agree to hook up to municipal water. And so that's one that I think would like to encourage those residents, because it's kind of a unique opportunity to get the state to come in and pay for municipal water to get you hooked up so you're not drinking PFAS contaminated water. So we will let you know when that gets scheduled. And then there is meetings in Grand Ledge for the Grand Ledge Army Armory. Am I saying that right? I think I've got that wrong. On April 23rd and 24th. Hold on. Let me go to the MPART calendar and I will get you the right thing on that, because obviously I'm getting my sites mixed up. So hold on. Kelly's gonna and we'll go to our resources, public engagement.
Yeah, Abby, it's for both sites. We actually just combine those into one site.
Okay.
The armory and the it's the aviation facility and
Aviation facility. That was what it was.
Yep, aviation facility and the annex property were two actual separate MPART sites, and we just combined those into one this week.
So. Yes, it was the Army. I was thinking Army, Armory, Aviation, but it was too many A's. So anyways, it's the Grand Ledge sites. They've got some PFAS issues out there, so there will be some in-person town halls on the 23rd and 24th. All right, next slide.
Abby, is it helpful if CAG members have the ability for us to come to those, or to sit at a table, hand out things, talk to people, whatever?
I think so. I think there's, this is kind of a rural area in Grand Ledge. But yeah, I think it's always helpful for you guys to be plugged into your community. So if you're close to Grand Ledge, please join us. They're at 6 o'clock. And it is on the MPART calendar, gives you some additional information on address. So yeah, absolutely. Okay. I know I've seen you at a couple, you and John were at, John Varese was at the one in Ionia, and that was very helpful. Definitely.
Yeah, so if people are in that area and want to come, I think it is a nice opportunity. I think sometimes it's easier for people to talk to other community members than people in government. No offense, folks that are working for Eagle and MDHHS, but it's just nice. Sometimes people want to ask questions that we can be there to answer. And it also gives us an opportunity to explain what the COG does and to do all that. So I'll try to go to the ones, especially in Otsego and Grand Ledge. Where is White Pigeon? It's got to be around somewhere.
It is down in Southwest Michigan.
Okay, maybe I'll hit all those. We'll see. Okay.
So, all right, Kelly, do I have any more slides? Oh, hold on, wait, there's more. So we did list a couple of new MPART sites and areas of interest. So Hamilton is down in Allegan County. That one, we are still trying to determine source. So we have done quite a bit of drinking water sampling in that very small town, but are not exactly sure of the source. So we listed it as an area of interest for the time being. So that one's on the MPART website. The Menominee warehouse fire that you'll remember from October of 22 transitioned from an area of interest to an actual MPART sites because we now have confirmed groundwater contamination above criteria. So that one is now an actual MPART site. And we'll keep an eye on that one. And then the one we just mentioned, the Grand Ledge National Guard Annex property, is merging with the Grand Ledge Army Aviation Support Facility and the Armory site, all in Eaton County in Grand Ledge. So we are now up to 280. Is it still 280? Yeah, because we merged sites.
Yep. We're at 280 sites in 25 areas of interest, with a few more teed up to go live between now and the next time we meet.
Yes, we've got still more in the pipeline. So we'll keep an eye on those. And then our next meeting is proposed for May 14th. Unless we're just all PFAS'd out and we can't take no more. What do you think, Sandy? So
yeah, I have to be in Denver that day to meet with the EPA about PFAS. So but we could talk about that as we get closer. I do think we sometimes struggle with coming up with topics to discuss. So either people need to kind of help us come up with some topics, or we could look at doing this every other month. It's up to whatever you guys think, which I guess goes into the discussion that's next of a COG membership discussion and kind of an open discussion. So Mary, I hope I didn't step on your toes with that, but we've talked about that before, kind of struggling with topics or what we want to discuss. So Mary, are you still on?
I am.
Okay.
Apparently I am having an issue with my, I don't know, connection here. Yeah, I guess it's up to the members what they think they want to do. We have talked about that, but we've also talked about the subcommittees maybe changing to different times as well. So, you know, I think anybody who has thoughts, you know, feel free to speak up. It should not just be leadership that, you know, is talking about these things. This group is open to everybody, and we would like to hear from everybody as far as what you think. I guess there's other questions. Sorry.
Oops, sorry, Mary. I was just going to say, I know that there is like 2 or 3 things going on for PFAS conferences and other conferences going on for the June meeting. On June 11th, we've got our June meeting for MPART. And I know there's at least the National PFAS Conference that's down in Ann Arbor that week. I've got another conference that's up north, and I think there was something else proposed. Oh yeah, there was another meet and greet going on. So I just wonder, yeah, anyways, just throwing that out there for another potential conflict for if some of this group was planning on going to any of those conferences that are going to be in the state.
Yeah, I definitely think there will be a large number of people at the National PFAS Conference in Ann Arbor, and it is that week. So I would propose at minimum we move the MPART meeting or just forego a meeting in June and give people a month off? Anybody have a thought on that? Anybody still here?
So this
Just
is
check.
Dan. That's gonna be a busy week generally, I think, for several people. So we're being kind of the Ann Arbor contingent, and HRWC folks are all going to be tied up with the PFAS conference. I'll put in a plug. So we are trying to organize a paddle during the PFAS conference. So look for details for that later. But basically, we'll paddle presumably from Metro Park to Metro Park, upriver of Ann Arbor. Should be a pleasant paddle to hear from environmental organizations about what's been going on in their respective areas of expertise. But that'll be kind of fun. Get people in kayaks and canoes during the conference. A lot of other good stuff happening that week. So yeah, it's good. A lot of content, a lot of busyness.
And it's the first week of summer. So I would like to propose that we not plan on a June meeting, and everybody can just have that month off.
I'll second that.
Third.
All right.
I don't know if I'm voting,
That's
but
a good idea.
Anybody got an objection to it? I double dog dare you.
that
So no
sounds
meeting in
fun.
June. Good.
Sounds good. No objection.
Okay. Mary, did you have stuff you wanted to talk about with membership? Or you were just opening it up?
I was just opening it up. I mean, I think we kind of covered the survey last month, and Portia has another survey that she's still working on that's going to come up in the future. I had thought about taking the documents that were suggested by members as that opening orientation or get to know you kind of a thing to new members. Maybe I'll go ahead and submit that to members and see if they agree. Maybe like 3 or 4 different documents. And when we have new members who join, we can go ahead and forward that, particularly those new members who were concerned about that, if they could join in and comment on if they think that those are appropriate.
Anybody got thoughts or comments on that or concerns?
I know for me, that role is really important, I think, just to kind of get your feet settled in the group and kind of figure out what's going on. This is John. You know, I don't have enough expertise myself to offer, but I just, you know, listening and learning from the group, and while you're participating with the local community, this is a great learning opportunity for anyone. And if they know the resources, where to tap those, and how to get a hold of folks for questions, follow-ups, that sort of thing, that's very helpful to do.
John, what's your thought, and Angela and anybody else who is a recent member, what are your thoughts of what would be important to include in a letter to members, to new members?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. For me, I think just a contact list and just a little brief tag on what that person's knowledge is or what their experience is. And you know, it's when you're new, you don't really know quite what questions to ask. And it is helpful to traverse the websites. There's a lot of good information there. So I let me think about that a little bit and maybe send you a note.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me or Sandy or Jason or even Dan and Joe as far as membership. And that, because I would like to finalize a letter on that so we can get all of that taken care of for when we have new members. And even
Yep,
Lois,
that'd be great.
because I think she just joined it as well, if she has ideas. I know some people had commented in the survey that they felt that they would have liked to have known more expectations of the group. And right now, I think the only expectation is that you have to attend, a majority of the meetings, I think. So, Angela.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like things written out. I feel like I retain information better that way. Also a big fan of just like general bylaws and a nice orientation package. So like obviously, I mean that would be quite a bit of work. But like I think it would be helpful for there to be some sort of bylaws. I know we don't really have that, but that many. But besides like however many percentage of meetings that you attend, but like that kind of expectation, and then also like just starting with an overarching like goal. What is the goal? Larger objective of this, and then maybe I know like I kind of went through some of the past meetings, and that's like posted online. But maybe just like half a page document, 1 page document about like past speakers that have joined us and past things and initiatives that we've worked on. I feel like that might be good just for overall orienting for new members.
Good. Do you feel like if we were going to do that, to go back and look, should we actually highlight like which meeting those speakers were at? So if a new member wanted to go back and review, would that be helpful?
I think that would be helpful, yeah. And then also just like mainly the overarching objective. And then also it's sometimes helpful for me to get some insight on like the impact. So like however long this coalition has been a thing, what have been some like impacts from that. Yeah, that might be helpful.
You know, just as it just got me thinking about, you know, going back and looking at what we've, you know, kind of covered to date and thinking ahead, you know, looking into future meetings and what we want to cover. This came up with HRWC as we're looking back across newsletters and topics, and after enough time has passed, you know, even the people that were involved in writing the newsletters forget what they wrote. So I think on a lot of these things, having, you know, the context of additional time and, you know, just time spent thinking about some of these different sites and issues, I think revisiting a lot of those issues probably wouldn't hurt, would probably be beneficial in a lot of cases. I know for me it would be just, you know, with what we've learned over the past few years, how much the issue has changed so rapidly, how much more understanding we have about PFAS globally. You know, going back on looking at some of those issues that we've already covered might still be useful to do it again.
I also just got an idea. So Abigail was really, really generous when I first joined and was confused. And she walked me through this like presentation. We had a Zoom meeting and she like went through everything and all the background. And it was very helpful in orienting myself. And obviously that's a lot of time to do that for every single person that joins. But perhaps we could like record just like one time that presentation and then just send that to people that join.
That's a great idea.
Or maybe the, you know, membership would want to do it once a quarter for all new members that come in or something like that. Obviously, it's a lot more personable to have somebody actually talking you through the process than watch a recording. So, but yeah, something like that. We could certainly share the slide deck because that's not a big deal.
The other thing that was brought up recently was the idea of a COG member being like a mentor for new members. That was brought up, but I don't know if anybody specifically is interested in that portion of it. I don't know that membership do that for each new member either. So if anybody is interested in that, if you could please reach out, or I don't know if Portia has, you know, her full survey done, if she would like to include that as, you know, a possible question or that. But thank you. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Jen, for tuning in there, offering your thoughts.
So I'm going to just clarify really quick. I heard 4 things that stood out to me. One was, I love the idea of a quarterly orientation for any new members with maybe that slide deck. I think it helps because then you could answer questions and all that, whoever does that. I heard John say it would be really helpful if we had member kind of short bio blurbs so people knew who we were and kind of what areas we sort of were at, where we were at, what we did. I heard assigning mentors or kind of walk-alongs with people that are new. And I also heard somewhere kind of having a running list or a thing of kind of how things have evolved over time and past accomplishments. Those 4 things may help us keep and get more members participating. So those are the 4 that stuck out to me. If there were more to it, please let us know so we can get moving on that, because I think that's good stuff. And Angela really wants the quarterly orientation idea. So I suspect Angela has just volunteered, though she did not know it. But I think she is probably going to be right on that membership group now, which will be
She's
great.
a write-in. She's a write-in
She's
candidate.
a write-in candidate for the membership committee. The other thing I think we got to ask is, are these committee times working for people? Because everybody is hungry when they get home from work before this meeting. Would we have more participation in subcommittees if those times were spread out somehow? And maybe that's a question that can be on the questionnaire that comes out wherever Dr. Fisher is. So throw that up there. All right.
The other thing I will just mention is, you know, not only is MPART a national leader on PFAS issues, but you guys are a national example of how to get good public input and communication. And so, you know, as much as we have talked historically about reaching out to your communities and engaging in conversations, I know that many of you talk nationally with other people, with other organizations. And so I don't know if any of you have been approached yet about, you know, talking about what you do with the COG, but I would just, again, you know, share liberally, because the time is coming very soon when the whole country will be handling PFAS issues, and you guys are going to be called upon not just in your communities, but as PFAS experts, really, because a lot of the states have zero information and zero experience as PFAS experts to represent the state of Michigan and PFAS citizens around the country. So just think about that. I don't know if that gets put into a handbook of expectations, but it's just one of those things that kind of happens organically, as Sandy, who never thought that she was going to be the PFAS poster child for many organizations now, who are just grabbing her face and suddenly running and saying, here she is. Sandy can solve all the PFAS problems.
Yes, that was not my dream. I was going to continue my work with sex offenders and do something easy, not work with PFAS. So here I am. But anyway,
crazy people.
That's true. We are really kind of unique. We are a unique animal here. So, all right. Anything else we gotta talk about? Any other questions, comments? Open? Yes, Angela.
Sorry, I feel like I'm talking so much right now.
I
totally forgot to do this beginning, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Abigail. So I had Abigail, I work at the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators, and I had Abigail join us because I was raving to all of these Minnesota legislators about Michigan's like biosolid plan after Abigail had that presentation with me. And she actually presented to a bunch of Minnesota, I think 2 Minnesota committees on Michigan's PFAS plan and everything. And they ended up introducing a bill in Minnesota to test for PFAS and biosludge. So
Nice.
shout out Abigail. That's amazing.
Nice. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Great
Yes,
job,
everybody
Abigail.
should have a biosolids bill.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Yes. All right. Anything else?
Well, Sandy, I was wondering, this is Lynn, if if we're being called upon, even informally, can we, get honorary doctorates or something, like Dr.
Exactly.
McIntosh? Do you?
I will
know,
print them up. Yes.
Look, you
yeah,
have
okay,
at
thank
least
you.
2 doctorates.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe a law degree.
Yeah, she does. She
I know.
does. The fact that she can write a legal complaint under RCRA to ask for enforcement actions, I think Lynn does have a legal degree.
She does. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Angela, your hand is still up, or you're asking another question. Either are fine.
No, I'm not. Sorry, I forgot
Okay.
to put it down.
All right. Well, it is 7:30 on a beautifully sunny spring evening. If there's nothing more, I vote we just call this early and go. No complaints about that. All right. Well, everybody have a wonderful April. Hope those flowers bloom soon, and we will see you later.
Okay. We'll see you
Thank you
on,
very much.
we'll
Yeah,
see
thank
you
you,
all on
Sandy.
Thursday.
We'll
Thanks,
see you all
Carolyn.
on Thursday. That's
Thanks,
right.
everyone. See you Thursday.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.